they were partly financed, for instance, by Rhodes, the Rhodes Trust. And how Milner got into this was he was the chief Rhodes trustee from 1905 when he came back from Africa to his death in 1925. All right. So this was it's an Atlantic block. Streit, Clarence Streit, S-T-R-E-I-T, Union Now with Great Britain. All right, he represents what this group wanted. Clarence, S-T-R-E-I-T. If he's still alive, he probably lives in Washington. I had his daughter in my class, and as a visitor, but not as a student of mine. And he was built up by this people as the only solution. This is in my book. His name and when it happened, and
by the Round Table people.
By the Round Table people, and it was his book Union Now, which came out in 1938, was called anonymously in the Round Table magazine by Lionel Curtis. The Only Way, it was headed. It was then reviewed anonymously in the Christian Science Monitor by Lord Lothian as the solution of our problems. And what it is essentially a union of the Atlantic bloc. Printed pages.
Not world domination.
Not world domination. Of course, this was Rhodes' idea.
Right.
He wanted the United States in the English Commonwealth. All right. Secondly, these people are not pro-communist, as I know them. And certainly the Round Table group and the Milner group and the people that I'm writing about, and I notice I followed them up only to 1940, which is the end of the Morgan Bank, when they had to incorporate because of the inheritance taxes and so forth. They had to incorporate. They were before that a partnership.
When did the Council of Foreign Relations form?
It was originally established by a group here about 1919,
okay.
But they had in the group that we went, it's the Inquiry. The Inquiry was the post-war planning group set up by the Morgan interests in 1917 in the United States, of which the technical head was the head of the American Geographical Society. All of this is in my book. No.
Oh,
that's National Geographic.
I have that on my mind.
Ella Hugh, was it? No.
That's all.
Well, it doesn't. It's in my book. You see, my names are slipping me now. Anyway, it's called The Inquiry. There's a whole book on it, and it's called The Inquiry. So you can find it by looking up that title. But you can find it also if you can look at my book. The unfortunate part is it's not in the paperback. It's in the first part when they were forming the thing, which is in the big version of it. The Inquiry got together in Paris and agreed to establish an organization out of which came the Royal Institute of International Affairs. And that Royal Institute of International Affairs had branches in all of the Commonwealth countries, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Canada, eventually in India, and they even, I think, had one somewhere else. Pakistan, when it divided, they established one. But in the United States, of course, they didn't have to because they had the Council of Foreign Relations. But when they came over here, coming back from Paris, they found that a movement had begun here already to form a Council of Foreign Relations, so they moved in and took it over, and they could do that because they represented Morgan. And in that crowd was Willard Straight, who was a Morgan partner, and he died at the peace conference of the influenza. And, of course, the man who was the active, supposed to be, Tom Lamont.
President Bill Clinton.
Great guy for revealing this. But then they became absolutely sour, and they're now denouncing me. I'm a member of the establishment, and
because you're repudiating it?
I don't know.
You don't know what?
I don't know, really. I'm baffled. I'm baffled by the whole thing. I don't know why Macmillan acted the way it did. I don't know why. I can think these guys are just trying to make a living. I think they'd write anything that they got paid for writing, which is my feeling about it. So, now, I was angry about this. Then somebody wrote to me from the University of Nevada, I believe it was, in Reno, I think. And he was very angry over what was going on there. over this.
Now, this is in the 71,
No, this would be 73.
73 that it came to your attention.
Oh, when did, no, this came in the election of 72.
72.
The
Okay.
spring of 72.
Okay, fine. So it was right after it came out.
Yeah, I think.
Okay. Then in 73, somebody called you.
In 73, somebody called me. Now, I can give you the exact dates on this if I can get to the papers, but I don't have them anyway. And he wanted me to do something to stop the influence that this book was having in Nevada, particularly as promoting anti-Semitism.
Now, basically, Professor Quigley is talking about the book None Dare Call It Conspiracy, written by Gary Allen and Larry Abraham. And the book doesn't promote anti-Semitism. It does talk about some Jewish bankers, but then there are Jewish bankers and there are a lot of non-Jewish bankers. It has nothing to do with Jewish at all. It has to do with people who have the desire to create a world system. And the majority of bankers, as Carroll Quigley points out, the international bankers are not Jewish at all. In fact, many times these Jewish names are used, I believe, personally, as a front to draw our attention away from the real forces working behind the scenes. So let's go ahead and go on with the interview with Professor Quigley.
Because there's a group of people who are using this book, and they're total nuts. I get letters from them all the time. I can show you some of them if you want. Complete nuts. Who claim that this is a Jewish conspiracy, that is part of the same thing as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which we now know was a Tsarist Russian police forgery of 1905.
It wasn't. It was written by
that this is the same thing as
Madame Blavatsky's
the Illuminati.
disciples.
And the Illuminati were founded in 1776 by a Bavarian named, I think it's Weishaupt, or something like that. And that the Illuminati are a branch of the Masons, and that they took over the Masons, you see. And the whole thing is a nightmare.
Right.
That all secret societies is the same secret society. Now, this was established by nuts for hundreds of years. There were people who said the Society of Cincinnati in the American Revolution, of which George Washington was one of the shining lights, was a branch of the Illuminati and was a secret society, and therefore that's why the Masons built the monument in Alexandria to Washington. Not because he was the first president of the United States, because he was the Mason and the head of the Illuminati in this country, and therefore was one of the founders of the Society of Cincinnati. Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it becomes, you can't believe it. Now, these same conspirators are the Jacobins who made the French Revolution. A woman named Nesta, N-E-S-T-A, Webster, wrote that book. To refute it, my tutor, who's a Rhodes Scholar, Crane Brinton, B-R-A-N-T-O-N, wrote his doctoral dissertation called The Jacobins, in which he refutes her. Do you see?
Right.
Now, I think at the end of his life, Brinton probably came to feel that he was wrong, that there was some secret society involved in the Jacobins. And a student of his named Elizabeth Eisenstein, who's a marvelous researcher, she's now a professor at American University, under Brinton wrote a doctoral dissertation on the founder of the Barbeuf conspiracy. The Barbeuf conspiracy was a conspiracy of the extreme left, which burst out in France in 1894 or so, led by a man named Barbeuf, who was executed for it. But the man behind it was a descendant of Michelangelo named Buonarroti, because Michelangelo's family name was Buonarroti. Look, if you can, at Eisenstein's book, which was published by Harvard, her doctoral dissertation, which shows that Buonarroti founded many secret societies. You see, one of them was the Barbeuf people, who are now being praised to the skies by all the neo-Marxists, like Marcuse and others, you see, as the great heroes, because they tried to change the